Hello and welcome to another post-game edition of the Nittany Dispatch. I'm John Sauber, Penn State beat writer at the Seminole Daily Times. She's Audrey Snyder at The Athletic, and we are tired. It is roughly 3 a.m.
I'm feeling great, John. I don't know about you.
Yeah,
I'm
that's a
feeling
lie.
great. I'm bringing the whiteout energy to the pod.
Yeah. So before I forget, because I am liable to forget a lot of stuff this morning, I guess, technically, considering it's 3 a.m. But don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, those 5-star reviews really help us out. 5-star ratings help us out as well. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button down below. Hit the subscribe button as we continue our new march to 2,000 subscribers. But this has been a very long day. A lot of great college football today. Curious as to whether or not you think that it was the case in Beaver Stadium tonight. Was that great college football, Audrey?
It was very good football for Penn State. I think, John, we'll get into here what we learned tonight during Penn State's win, opening Big Ten play with victory against Illinois. You and I both thought that Penn State would win by more. I think a good fair number of people did, I think, too. Kind of took a little while for Penn State to pull away here, and we'll get into all of that. But, John, I think it was good football. I think we learned tonight that Penn State can run the football and can do it authoritatively, and that is not something that they could consistently do last year. And you know what that means, John? You can take a good run game on the road. You can take a good run game into Big Ten play when it gets dicey. You can take a good run game into the playoff, right? So I do think there's that element to tonight that we learned.
Yeah, I think it's clear that Penn State has a dominant run game.
Mm-hmm.
I think so. I was talking to some people about this following the game. I think I said 31-13 was my projected final score. I thought they would cover the spread. They did not. And I thought they would win this game going away. I mean, obviously, to be clear, I was wrong, right? Like I was wrong about those things. But I don't know that the process of coming to that conclusion was incorrect or that like I feel like I got something massively wrong about this game. There are a couple of things that I point to as to why this game was not a bigger blowout or a more convincing win for Penn State. A lot of that for me is the decision making as a firm member of Team Never Punt. I hated
Not
some of the
this
decisions.
already.
Yeah, listen, I think it's where we got to start because I think it doesn't matter right now. It's going to matter against Ohio State. It's going to matter against USC. It's going to matter even potentially against Wisconsin. But like there were some decisions that I thought Penn State made that cost themselves points, right? Like they cost themselves opportunities to try and score touchdowns. Both Sanders Sahaydak 40-yard field goal attempts, I would have gone for it. They had a 4th and 3 where they punted and it like they end up getting the ball back. Illinois flips the field right back and they don't score a touchdown off that drive. It's just one of those things like I feel like they have an opportunity to step on a team's throat and go for the win in the first quarter or early. I think it was early in the second quarter and they don't. And the biggest issue for me, especially with the first one, that first field goal attempt, I believe it was 4th and 3 or 4th and 2. And Penn State to that point, its shortest rush was a 3-yard gain by Tyler Warren because he scored a touchdown on that play. So the maximum he could have gained is 3 yards. They were destroying Illinois on the ground and they punt, right? Like I think that is you're kind of giving it up there.
I think, all right, John, I think you jumped 12 steps ahead of us here. But
as I tend to do.
But so Penn State gets the win 21-7 against Illinois. John's already finding the flaws in the victory. I'm with you though on the punt early on. I believe it was second drive of the game, right? Because Illinois comes out, starts with a touchdown. Penn State responds with the touchdown. Penn State comes back and then punts. And for me, that was one of those where it was like, this seems like a little out of character for what we've seen so far for a team that needs to be aggressive. I thought, and I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit with James Franklin on Monday because I am curious on that. So yeah, I thought that was an interesting decision, but we also learned today the issues with the kicking game have not disappeared. That is like on a scale, John, of 1 to 5. 1 being like, you're fine because you're never going to kick field goals because you are who you are. And 5 being, this is a massive problem. It's going to cost you a game. where would you put Sanders Sahaydak after he misses a pair of 40-yard field goals in this game? 1 to
So,
5.
and I'll be writing about this in my Good Bad Ugly column that you can find on SaturdayDaily.com. You can of course find Audrey's writing over at The Athletic as well. I think this should be a one, right? Like this should be a one issue because they shouldn't be like
But you know it's
the way.
not. You
No,
know they're
it's
gonna still
right. That's the thing. That's
put it in, like,
100%.
reality. Yeah.
It's I would say it's a 5 because they're going to keep trying these field goals or they're not going to be aggressive enough. And I don't even blame Sahaydak for missing those. Like, don't put him
You're
in that spot. Like, you have no faith that this kid can make these field goals, right? Like he's
wait, John.
struggled. He's
You're
had a hard
not
time making
blaming
them.
the kicker for missing the field goal when that is
I,
his job to make
oh,
the
it's
field
it's
goal.
100% his job to do it. But they've had plenty of time to evaluate him. They've had plenty of time to evaluate their kicking game in general. They should know where they can reasonably try these field goal
That's
attempts and
fair.
have a
Mhm.
X percentage chance of making it. Clearly, 40 yards is like not that range. And they went to Ryan Barker for the last extra point of the game.
Yes.
Like I think it would be misleading. Like we'll probably ask James about this on Monday, but if he says that like this is they're sticking with Sander, like they never considered otherwise, that's probably misleading. They went to Barker at the end of the game
Mhm.
anyways. They clearly aren't 100% bought in that Sander is the guy. And if that's the case, well, then you aren't 100% bought in that he should be out there kicking field goals, period, which means you shouldn't be kicking that many of them. And if you have the opportunity to do something different that is more beneficial anyways, you should do it. And this, I mean, it is funny that we're having this conversation as I continue to become the
Anti-field
human
goal.
embodiment of never wanting to kick on this podcast, especially. But like the fact that this has happened this game, like this is what I'm talking about, right? All of those discussions we've had, you and I have talked about it on the pod, off the pod. This is what I'm referring to, and I think they're not putting a player in position to succeed. And so I think that's a bigger issue because as James has said this with the penalties and stuff, their job is to put these guys in position to succeed.
Mhm.
You're not doing it. Like making that in-game decision, maybe to some it doesn't seem like that. They're not putting him in position to succeed, therefore not putting the team in position to succeed.
So here, this is what I found really interesting tonight, right? So Sahaydak misses the 40-yarder. Illinois then comes back, misses a 45-yarder. We can get into that kind of comedy of errors with the snap over
Oh
the
god.
head, and that was a bad, very bad sequence for the Illini. But then Penn State comes back, right? And they have 4th and 3, and they try the 2-yard pass to Fleming, right? So in my head, I'm saying, okay, they have no confidence in Sanders Hayek. They just passed up the opportunity. They went for it. But then later on in the game, then they try another 40-yard field goal with him. And so to me, it's almost like we're getting this little bit of a mixed message on the aggressiveness
Yes.
because the 4th down was like hey, we're going to put our I'm gonna mess up the analogy. We're going for the kill shot.
Yeah.
And that's what like the Fleming play, that's what that was. But then they backpedaled it, and it's like, okay, then you miss the other field goal. So I am saying that it is a 5 on my own creative 1 to 5 scale. It's a problem. And James Franklin after the game didn't want to get too much into it and said that he really is like a fan of Sanders Sahaydak as a
Yeah.
person and hopes he enjoys the win, celebrates the win. Again, separating the performance from the human being, which is very important to do in
Yes.
anything.
Like, to be
Um,
clear, every time we're critical of anyone on here, unless we say it's of them as a human, like, we're
yeah,
not
it's the
criticizing these are
performance,
college
right?
kids. Yeah.
Yeah, and I saw a lot of this from fans on X. Also, I don't know if you
Twitter.
caught this, John. Um, like the grumbles, the groans after his second miss, like there were
Yeah.
boos.
Yeah, and it's but again, like, he's not
You
trying
know,
to miss
John,
the field goal.
maybe
Like,
they
he's
weren't booing him; they were booing the decision. Like it was probably you. It's coming from
it's
your end of
just
the
me
press box.
yeah, just me booing the decision down there. No, I think, like, I don't know. Like I said, it goes back to all of the stuff with them putting him in position to succeed, and I don't think they're doing that. And the thing is, too, with these decisions, and usually they're analytically driven, and
Hmm.
that's why coaches make these decisions. The best way I've ever heard this phrase is so Princeton wide receivers coach Brian Flynn goes on several Eagles podcasts I listen to, Philly Special with the Ringer, PHLY. We've mentioned them before, the Eagle show on there, and he said on those shows, you can't date the analytics. You have to marry them. Like you have to follow the numbers every time, right? Otherwise, you're not getting the benefit of, you know what I mean, the percentages that you're playing. You're trying to pick and choose your spots, and like that's not how that works. And so you have to be like, if you're going to do it, you got to do it. Like you got to follow every time you're supposed to go for it, you got to go for it. Every time you're supposed to punt, you got to punt. Every time you're supposed to kick the field goal, you got to kick the field goal. And if you don't, you're going to kind of mess up your own numbers and your own percentage chance, or not your chances of them, but you're going to miss out on beneficial times potentially. Maybe you miss out on some harmful times too, but like you have to be fully bought in on them. And if you're not, then you're not getting the full benefit of doing those sorts of things when it's analytically sound and numbers driven sound. And that's what that felt like to me, right? Like I actually, and I said this, and I try to make a point whenever there's one of these decisions that I think might be controversial. Like I'll tweet out like, hey, I would go for it here, because I don't want like the result.
Yeah,
like I don't want to be the person that's like, oh, like you're only saying that because it didn't work. Like I put out what I would do. Usually it's going for it. But like the pass to Fleming, like he beats his guy and his guy just makes a great tackle. It's like, what are you going to do? Sometimes you just get beat on plays. I thought Kotelnicki made a good play call. Thought Allar made a great throw considering the pressure. Thought Fleming made a great catch and just got tackled by someone who made a great tackle. And that happens. But I thought that was a good decision. I really hope for Penn State's sake that the reason they kicked the field goal later wasn't because they failed on that one. You know what I mean? Like you can't like base those decisions off each other. You have to be fully bought in, like I said. And I'm with you. Sometimes I think they're inconsistent with it.
I was going to say, do we think James Franklin is fully bought in with it? Because keep in mind,
no, he's not. We know he's not.
And that's the thing, right? Again, think about it. The psychology background, right? He always says, it's one of his, he always says that his greatest flaw and his greatest weakness, I forget what it is now. It's 3 a.m. But the point is, we could sense the inconsistencies, and if we can sense that, I think that's telling. And that's, again, I feel like right now, John, we're having a conversation where if people just tuned in, they're probably like, oh, Penn State must have lost this game, because it sounds like we're like really going off here. They did not. They won the game. But I do think like the decision making stuff is interesting. The kicking stuff is not going to go away. But the positives here.
I want to say real quick before we pivot to the positives. The reason I lead off with that, just to, inside baseball a little bit, like, is because that's the thing I think from this game that I can draw from this game that could potentially impact them the most in a more important game later, whether it's Ohio State, USC, a playoff game, a Big Ten title game. Like, it's that decision making that can be, we can maybe in 5 weeks from now, we're pointing back to this game like, remember when they made this call? Well, they did it again, and like we should have known that this was coming because of it. So that's why it may seem like you're right that we're like doom and gloom about what Penn State did today. But I just think this is the one thing that I really pulled that I thought was indicative of what maybe is to come.
The positive that I pulled away from today, John, was that I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but that the run game, they can run it authoritatively. James Franklin challenged his offensive linemen on Tuesday. We found this out postgame. Challenged them on Tuesday and said that he needed them to be the difference, that they knew that this was a game that was going to be one in the trenches, right? This was bully ball. And how many times, John, have we seen Penn State be on the other side of this with the D-line, right? Think back to Ann Arbor a few years ago.
Think back to Illinois a few years ago.
Right? And then we had the whole conversation that they weren't big enough up front and they weren't beefy enough. And gosh, that's been going on for a long time. But they are bigger now up front. And we did see improved results with this run game. And I got the numbers pulled up in front of me here. After tonight, Nick Singleton and Kaytron Allen are the second set of Penn State teammates to each have 2,000 career rushing yards, joining Lydell Mitchell and Franco Harris. Pretty good company there, John. To me, the conversation of how does this team win games and how do they continue to win games, we've seen the offense be explosive, right? We've seen it with Drew Allar. We saw it against West Virginia. But to me, I think what they're doing best right now is this run game. And that's the part to me where it helps. Obviously it's going to help open everything up. We saw Tyler Warren with a rushing touchdown tonight. So again, like the Tyler Warren wrinkles are going to continue. But I just think you've got two backs that were physical. You have an offensive line that played really well. And to me, that is a huge, huge, notable development for this program.
Let's take a brief break from the podcast to discuss our friends over at Roback. If you like Roback as much as we do, I have good news for you. You can get 20% off your first order over at roback.com with code TND20. That's TND as in the Nittany Dispatch 20. It is as good as it gets when it comes to athleisure and activewear. Like you can see it. I'm wearing the hat right now with the dog logo, the Roback hat. I have the Roback performance hoodie on right now. I wore it to the game today. This won't surprise you, Audrey. I wore performance joggers to the game too. They were also Roback. It is the best apparel that I own. It is the comfiest. It's it was very funny. The heat was on in the press box when we get up there. I felt nice and cool. They open the windows, it gets a little cool in there. I felt nice and warm. It's just great at all times.
You know what you do, John? If you're leaving your house and you're not sure what the weather's going to be, you take a road back. It's your road back for the road.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we're
I
going
do
to lose
that.
a sponsorship deal because of that comment now. But no, it is. I do take a Roback with me everywhere. It is. I always wear the hoodies. I said it before. I wear the performance polos golfing, the performance hoodies, the performance joggers.
I got some
the shorts.
compliments. White hat yesterday. I was
There you
around
go.
town on Friday, and everybody was out in their whiteout gear except for me, and I had a
Audrey
white
bringing the
hat
whiteout
on. So
energy with the hat.
people thought I had the energy. They did.
Yeah, of course. Audrey preparing is the Penn State fan she is for the not actually a whiteout. But yes, the Roback apparel is unmatched. It's as good as it gets. And like I said, if you want to buy some for yourself or someone else in your life, you can get 20% off your first order with code TND20. That's as in the Nittany Dispatch 20, TND20 over at roback.com. Now back to the show. Yeah, I think the run game success is important. I think you're right that like it will lead to a lot of success. I think they also need to be careful not fall into the trap of getting away from the passing game too often.
Mhm.
I think too many times with Penn State teams under James Franklin, we've seen them fall too far to one side or the other. Like this is working, we must continue doing this, and it's like that's not necessarily how these things work. And so I think Andy Kotelnicki hasn't done that to this point, but I think it's something
Coach
worth
K.
monitoring. I did. You would be proud of this. I would refer to him as Coach K to I think it was Nick Singleton tonight because
Oh,
I will. Well, see, that's the
I've
thing. And
changed
like,
you, John. I've broken you.
no, I just like what I want. I want Nick to be comfortable in the conversation. So whatever he calls him, I'll just call him that to make it easier. And so,
Sure,
uh,
sure. John just wants to be liked. Human nature just wants
no,
to be liked.
he was talking about like uh, to this point though about how explosive they are, and that's like one of the biggest differences from last year and how they're much more explosive than they were last year. But it all starts up front, right? Their offensive line has been fantastic this year. I think like everyone has kind of taken notice of the fact that no one's really talking about them, right? And that's usually a good thing. But I was talking to Venga Ioane tonight after the game, and I thought this was interesting because I was asking about how Drew Allar is like growing and what guys are noticing. Venga told me this that uh, essentially at halftime, like when things weren't necessarily great, right? The game's tied at 7. The
Mhm.
offense has only scored 7 points. Aller spoke to the line, and the quote from Venga was, "We came in for halftime, and he spoke to the O line right then and there. He told us that we were doing a good job and that we were wearing them out. He could tell we were wearing them out. That gets us going as an O line when our quarterback gives us a little bit of love for the job that we're doing up front. Like this is the little stuff that when you were the group that's kind of carrying the team, like the offensive line has
Mhm.
a little for long stretches so far this season, and you're not getting the recognition, it's human nature, right? It can be a little tougher to want to go out there and do that and be like, oh, you're not getting any credit for it.
Oh
This is the
no.
kind of little stuff that can be helpful, right? Like,
Does
Drew,
this does this mean, John, we're gonna get a James Franklin this week? No one's talking about the offensive line.
no,
No one appreciates them. No one is that gonna be this week's
I'll
move?
make sure I send him a link to senatordaily.com so he
We,
can
well,
read
we
some
can send
coverage
him right
about that.
here in the podcast where we were having
Yeah,
this.
yeah,
But no, I think you're right with that. It's they want to be seen, they want to be recognized. It's nice to be appreciated, right? Again,
yes,
these are like human things. It's everybody wants to be liked and appreciated. And I think that's where we're seeing the maturation of this football team. Because they lose Sal Wormley today, and you look at that line and you say, wow, they really don't miss a beat. We see Nolan Rucci go in and out throughout the game, as they kind of continue to work him in.
they
And it,
move their
mhm.
linemen around. They shift to tackle over formations, which is essentially like
But
they move the left tackle to the right of the right tackle, or the right
yes,
tackle to the left of the left tackle, so they're unbalanced. They do a lot of stuff
It's
that is like not usual for linemen and can be hard for them because
yes.
they're being asked to do things that they're not
Mhm.
used to, and you just never notice them. And that's like the highest compliment I can give them.
And that's part of it, John, because it's like, oh, hey, look where they're lining up here, and we're all just like, oh, wow, that's cool. And then the play happens, and like, it's like, okay, what was the result of the play? We're on to the next thing, right? But I think that is a really good point you brought up too about all that's being asked of them, and how they're doing it, and how they're adjusting, and they're doing it so well. But I think for these two running backs, for Kaytron Allen and Nick Singleton, this is a big bounce back year, right? This is so much of last year and kind of how things went wrong for this whole offense. It's different now. And Katron said that, obviously he's always had that really physical running style. And he said that he loves it. And he loves that Tyler Warren has that same physicality, right? We saw that from Warren several times tonight with his rushing style. And like there's something there with this ground game that is different. And did you catch this post game where James Franklin mentioned that how he's on the headset again, reminding Andy
Listen,
Kotelnicki to keep, and I'm thinking, oh no, don't tell me we're gonna
I
have to revisit last year.
well, when I said that you can fall into the trap of doing just because you're doing something well, you should keep doing it. I had some, some quotes in mind there. And I will say, by the way, this goes to that point.
Mhm.
It always drives me nuts. I noticed this in like 15 different college football games this weekend since I was able to watch a bunch of them Friday night, noon, 3:30 today, as we waited
Shout
for
out
kickoff at
night
Penn
kick,
State.
yeah.
Yeah. But like so many times teams will like have a running back break off a big run and he's gassed because he just ran 60
Yeah.
yards. And then they give him the ball the next play.
Yep.
It's like he's like this is not good. Like this, I understand. Like, oh, keep feeding him. He just ran 60 yards. Like he's exhausted. Like you should not overdo it in that sense. Like get another running back in there, run something else. Like, but all that goes to that idea that like, hey, this is working. Like we have to keep doing it. I don't think any team should think like that. I think plays set up other plays. And I think just because play X keeps working, that doesn't mean play X is the answer. It might be play Z or play Y that comes next is the answer. So, but yes, I very much, as you can tell, caught that comment.
Yes, I thought that was interesting. And then James did quickly say, like, Andy's doing a great job. I just, kind of always as a play caller back to James's play calling days, like you want to hear those reminders. At least that's what he says, right? It's good to hear
And
that
to be
voice.
clear, I don't think James is like people will go straight to this. I don't think James is meddling. Like
No, no, no,
he's
no.
just being a head coach. Like it
He's doing
is
his
what it is.
job.
Yes, Andy Kotelnicki's calling Andy Kotelnicki's plays just to get out in front of that.
Right, yeah. And Kaytron Allen, 18 carries, 102 yards. Nick Singleton, 16 for 94. Both those guys got touchdowns. Um, the number 3 back situation, we didn't really have to get into that today, just because obviously Cam Wallace is unavailable. But we saw
I
Bo
would,
Prabula.
for what
Go
it's
ahead.
worth, I would not. I would expect that to be the case moving forward.
Right. Yeah, I don't think we're going to be seeing Cam Wallace anytime soon. Bo Prabula, we saw him get some run there a few times throughout the game. Drew Allar, the sneaky mobility, John. It's a theme every week, and they're the kind of plays that when you go back and you're thinking about this game, like I go back early on, might have even been the first drive where he's going down the field and he just makes this really nice cut. And you say, man, this is like something that we would not have seen Drew Aller make this kind of play last year, right? It's those little subtle movements that extend plays where you just kind of keep seeing this. So actually, John, perhaps the third running back now is kind of Tyler Warren with
Yeah,
the
no,
way
that's
in
true.
which they're getting him involved, which has been really interesting and fascinating to see. I think there's a lot for this offense to hit on, and seeing how they had to respond. Right, you come out, the crowd was amped up. We can get into the non-whiteout, but really it very much felt and looked like a whiteout crowd.
I do want to say something on that
hmm
front real quick. The reason they don't have a second whiteout has nothing to do with Penn State like networks paying for the whiteout. Like that's not.
Yeah,
I've
it's
seen that floated. It has nothing to do with networks are, paid a certain amount of money to get to host them. That's not how that works. Penn State chooses the
Yeah.
whiteout after they are aware of what the network is likely to do. That's how the whiteout is Washington, because there had to be some negotiating to get it moved to a certain kick time. They don't care what network it's on. I'm pretty sure networks don't really care if they have the whiteout or not, based on the fact that Fox has essentially said, nah, no thanks, and moving Ohio State
We
to,
want big
in
noon.
all likelihood, big noon kick anyways.
No, and that's the whole whiteout thing is a big old can of worms these days.
Yes.
But I mean the crowd was amped up. They were there early, they were loud, they were wearing white. It felt like your normal whiteout game,
Yeah.
which was really really
Press box
cool.
shook.
Press box shook. It was
Wasn't
slightly
great.
terrifying.
Hated
There
it.
were fireworks.
By the
Um,
way, for those curious, we have, and I will not let Audrey leave this podcast
uh-oh.
virtual studio before we discuss. She did take the scary steps tonight and did not have fun. Anyways, continue with
I took the steps. We'll get to that at the
yes, we'll
appropriate
get to that.
time. Uh, but no, I just think you look at the way this offense is going and how they're moving, and it's like, okay, now you had to play from behind, right? Your crowd's amped up, and now you're down 7-0. And what do, right? What's that response? And they came out and they marched straight down the field. And I saw that opening drive from Penn State, and I thought, okay, they're moving the ball pretty well. They're just going to keep moving it. And then as you and I already discussed, then you get the stall decision, right? To not go
Well,
for it.
here's the thing though. They did keep moving it, right? Next drive, 6
Oh
plays,
yeah, they were
38
yes.
yards.
Yeah, they
Like,
were moving it, but
and
not no points to show for it.
yeah, that's the thing.
Like
Like, that's why when I go back to, I don't necessarily feel that the thought process I had about how this game would go was wrong. It's because I feel like everything leading up to the opportunities to score was like, it played out how we thought, right? Like the drives, just for context, six after the touchdown drive to start the game, they go 6 plays, 38 yards. They punt on a 4th and 1. 13 plays, 69 yards. They attempt a field goal. 4 plays, 11 yards. They attempt a field goal. 12:74 touchdown, 9:43 turnover on downs. That was the 4th down to the Julian Fleming attempt.
mhm.
6:45 field goal attempt, 8:41 touchdown, and then end of the game. Right, they're killing clock. But like, I don't know, it like all these drives, like 75 yards, 38 yards, 69 yards, 11 yards, 74, 43, 45, 41. I don't feel like their offense struggled to move the ball. It was they they had 0 3-and-outs in the entire game. Their shortest drive was the one where they attempted the field goal, right?
Mhm.
Right before the half. That was the one that, if I remember
The
correctly.
the first field goal, I believe. Yes. Cuz then they had they had the drive where they got the ball back with less than a minute left right before the half. They tried moving it down the field.
Yes.
They had the 15-yard reception, and then Aller takes the sack, and it's like, okay, we're just gonna get out of here at
Yes,
the
yes, yes. Sorry,
halftime. So yeah,
that was the drive that I was thinking of. Yes, that was the one. Sorry, that was, I misspoke there about the
no,
field goal
you're good.
attempt. They got the ball off of an Illinois missed field goal attempt. That's where I was
Yeah, yeah,
confusing it.
that was gosh, and that was the Illinois
Train
sequence,
wreck.
John. Oh, buddy, I mean, that is if you're if you're an Illinois fan, you're probably not listening to John and I because you've heard enough of what we had to
Although
say.
I don't know if you if you check out some of our post game pods, we have plenty of opposing fans pop in every
That's
now and
true.
again. If you are an Illinois fan, welcome to the
Welcome.
podcast.
We hope you enjoyed the
Hit that
game.
thumbs up
Hope
button
you had a
down
nice
below.
trip if you're here.
Subscribe. Keep listening the rest of the year. It'd be great.
No, I just the way they came out, like I was really impressed Illinois' opening drive. And I thought, wow, they just came out, punched Penn State right in the mouth. Penn State responds. Okay, what happens next? But then you look at the way that half plays out and you're like, okay, they're moving the ball and Penn State and I guess now's the time to get into this one, John. The penalties. This
Yeah,
is an
sloppy.
issue. Very sloppy. And it's been a theme, right? James Franklin said last week after Kent State that he was embarrassed by the penalties because at that point they were averaging 7 a game. You know how many penalties they had today, John?
6.
6.
Yeah.
Yes. Not great. And that opening drive for Illinois, I mean, Vanover has a penalty, Abdul Carter has a penalty. And so you're looking at it and you're like, they cannot get out of their own way. And that's
So
become a theme.
here's the thing with some of the penalties, and you're right about that. I actually agree with James that I thought that
They
that
don't
Tony
impact the
Rojas.
game. Oh, the
No,
Rojas. Yeah.
the Tony, he is right. Like, by the way, penalties like usually don't actually have that much of an impact on the game, or as much as you would think. They definitely feel worse than they actually are.
Mhm. Yeah, tell me that, John, when it's 3rd down and you have a penalty and extends a drive and yeah, but,
That's what I mean. It feels worse than it actually is. How many times did that drive stall out anyways because the offense was good enough to keep going? But like the Tony Rojas penalty, I thought was a bad call. Like I at first I was like, okay, he blindsides him. Then you watch, it's like, well, he's literally running straight to the ball carrier. The
it
guy gets
looked
in his
way
way.
worse
Like,
live
yeah,
because I had
he,
my binoculars on it live and it just because it looked like it's like, oh, he just
yes,
absolutely leveled somebody. It looked like it was a blindside hit.
yes. Well, and then the AJ Harris, I think they called DPI on him. That one was a good call. He was
Yes.
pulling the. At first, it looked like they called him for getting his arm underneath the wideout's arm, but then they show the replay and he's grabbing the undershirt of the receiver. But like some of them are just boy 3:30 a.m. almost swearing here on the podcast. They're
Let it
really
fly.
stupid. The block in the
Well,
back on the pick
James
six.
Franklin, he let it fly.
He did, and maybe that's license for me to do it whenever I want to. But like they AJ Harris
Mhm.
gets that pick as I'm like getting ready to go down on the field when I'm just taking the elevator. I was like watching back. So I actually see him get the pick, see him have an open lane to run. He's clearly going to score. I didn't see at the time who committed the penalty. I'm seeing now that it was Zion Tracy who did it.
Yes. Yep.
It is the play is over. AJ Harris has a free lane to the
Mhm.
end zone, and Zion Tracy, for no reason, pushes a defender, well, I guess an offensive player that's trying to get into the play in the back. That's one of the dumbest penalties I've ever seen, right? Like it is there's no point to it. It's not like,
Mhm.
oh, you're holding on the edge because the guy's about to get away, or it's like you're committing defensive pass interference because they're about to score a touchdown if you
Right.
don't commit the penalty, or even you jump off sides because like you bite on a snap count or the crowd noise is loud. This is just like, I'm gonna shove them for no
Yeah.
reason. And it ends up costing Penn State that, or AJ Harris that touchdown there.
Touchdown.
Like I thought it was very, very stupid. Like there was no point to the penalty. It wasn't in the for the cause of helping the play. It was just like, yeah, I'm gonna do this very dumb thing.
Yeah, and that's the like and James Franklin even said it. He said they need to be more disciplined and he said that it's on him to make sure they are more disciplined all throughout the week. So I'm a little curious. I'm going to have to start asking around on
Yeah.
what's different there. And a part of me did wonder as he said this though because again, it's a night game, the gallery's loaded with recruits. Part of me wonders if a little bit of that was like speaking to the families up there being like, "Hey, look at we're gonna be disciplined here," because he even mentioned, like, sitting up straight in meetings, and I'm like, "I
Yeah,
get what you're going for here, but, like,
that's
not
like
gonna
coach
change the
speak
penalty."
stuff.
Yeah, that's like
Yeah.
well, maybe if I wasn't slouching as much here, I'd
I
be
was
a
gonna
little
say
more
you can
sharp
see
at 3:30
that
in the morning.
I'm 6'2" and I'm very much slouched in this chair right now. But no, like I like he's trying to say that the idea is if you're disciplined in one aspect of life, it means you're
Mhm.
disciplined in all aspects. That doesn't necessarily always translate. But like I get it. Like some of the penalties are like that where it's like, wow, this like the jumping off sides, like they just gotta stop doing that. Like it is wild how often it happens. Like and you see it time and time again, and it's
And
not
Abdul
always the same
Carter
guys
and,
either.
Carter's had a few.
But so is Vanover. Like,
Yes.
it's
Mhm.
different guys, and now admittedly, you're right, like, Carter seemingly has been the culprit on a higher number of those than other guys, but still, it's happening across the board. I will say, and this is a credit to the fans, I thought the crowd was fantastic tonight for,
Mhm.
I was curious what it was gonna look like. I noticed tickets on secondary market were way cheaper than they usually are. I thought maybe
Yeah,
the
that
crowd
was
wouldn't be good.
wild. Mhm.
I couldn't figure that out, and I don't know why it happened, and I don't think anyone really fully knows. But
No.
like I thought the crowd might be iffy. The crowd was fantastic. There were a lot of calls, like a lot of penalties that happened because of the crowd noise,
Yep.
right? Like there were timeouts that had to be called. My favorite
James
one,
Franklin said 7 plays
yes,
they counted that the fans impacted, yep.
my favorite one is where Hakeem Beamon like flinches a little bit, like at
Mhm.
the offensive lineman, and the lineman flinches, and the denied Dennis Sutton goes nuts celebrating with
Yes, like,
Hakeem Beamon.
pretty much, like,
Like
headbutts him.
yes, and I but
Yep.
like, it looked like he was mad at him at first, and then you realize
Yes.
he's celebrating with him, but it was very funny to see Beeman, like, very intentionally like, because he can't cross into
Yep.
the neutral zone, and he doesn't. He just like flinches a little bit, like you do when you're like trying to scare someone to make them flinch, and it worked. Like I was just like, this was like a schoolyard tactic that worked out perfectly. I thought it was great, and it was a great job by Beeman to get that call for Penn State.
Yeah, that was because I noticed that same exact play. Because at first I was like, "What is Deny doing?" Because he was
He
like
was going ballistic.
fired up, and it is really cool. It is special to see how the defense, especially, plays off of the crowd, right?
Yeah,
And you can see right away, special teams comes out. They're raising their arms. They're getting this place loud, and I mean, it is such again, I'm gonna skip 12 steps ahead here, but it is such an advantage when you have a crowd like that when Ohio State comes to town, right? If it gets to the point where you're hosting a playoff game, like it is one of those just big time game changing. And what I did today, before, like when the players were warming up, just because I haven't had a chance to really walk around the stadium this year,
yeah.
I was like, I'm gonna go for a walk and kind of dodge the mist because it was just raining and misty all day here. It's been like raining and misting all week here. It feels like.
It's not made the golfing fun in the area. I will
See,
say that.
I can't attest to the golfing, but I can see how it's not good golf weather. Um, but I went around and you could just feel this place just like absolutely amped up. Now, I also I rode the new escalator, John. So
No, how
I
was
can
that?
It was wonderful. I tweeted a video out and I tweeted it and said, if you see this, that means the Wi-Fi also works. And it went through. So that was the student section escalator. Um, but my point was, right, you had people passing out pom poms, and I'm going up the elevator, and you see like where they've widened the concourse at the top, and people were flowing through there like way better than I can ever recall. Now, the student section is still getting people in there is pretty chaotic. Because I was trying to come down the steps while they were coming up, so I was swimming upstream.
Yeah.
That was a challenge. But like they have all of these grab and go kiosks, which have been a point of emphasis the last couple of years. So there's people in there. They've made it easier than ever for folks to buy alcohol. So if you're coming for a game later this year, I mean, again, this is essentially the whiteout, and people are like, there's no issue getting alcohol.
Yep.
And again, this
Listen,
is
I
pregame. I'm walking around.
I bought a chicken strip basket to eat, which is a conversation for another day for
Oh,
the reasoning on that.
I thought you were gonna say
And
you're like, oh, I went and bought a beer.
no, I went down with Johnny McGonigal from Penn
Okay.
Live, friend of ours, who also covers Penn State, and we didn't wait at all. Like we just were there, got it, and
Yeah.
came back up. It was I want to say it was like I don't know, maybe 45 minutes before kickoff, something like that, maybe an hour before kick, and there was no line.
No, I mean, and the thing that, and I thought going into today, I was like, okay, like the fans have picked up on the hints and the directives to wear white. They're going to wear white. And as I'm walking around and like you just kind of you get the image of the people come from over by the BJC walking towards you in white. You see the people coming up the street and I was like, "Oh yeah, this is going to be a whiteout." And so you could feel the energy in the building tonight. I
Yeah,
did find it interesting when they put the Brett Bielema clip very, very briefly on the video board.
yeah.
I actually thought that was really dumb, just because
I
of
hate
all the
that.
reasons that yeah, we
Yes,
talked about it before, like, that's not what was said, and it's like, I
it's like you don't have to engage in this. I understand, like
yes,
fans are gonna want any bulletin board material they get
mhm,
to get pumped up. Like, why just be pumped up about the game? Like, it's a massive game for your program
but I
that you root
hate it,
for.
John,
But
because,
like,
right,
no, I'm
let's
with you.
throw
Like, that's what
yeah,
I'm saying. Like,
yeah,
you
no,
don't
no,
need
we're on the
that to
same
get
page,
pumped
yeah,
up. Yeah, like
yes,
and like this idea that you need a fake, not a fake quote. He actually said that, but a quote taken out of context, like to be riled up about the game. I think it's silly, and I think like I don't know. He said a lot of things that were really good about the program, right? It was
complimentary.
very complimentary of the program in a lot of ways, and I just think like it was dumb that I don't know why Penn State would
I
engage
thought
in
it was
something like
stupid and
that.
petty, and I think,
Yes.
like,
And
there's
also, and this is, I apologize if Illinois fans are still listening and you have to hear me say this, but like it's Illinois. What are you doing? You
yeah.
know what I mean? Like you do Brett Bielema's got to be the reason you get fired up for a game. Like, come on.
Yeah, and it was the clip was so short, and it was hard to hear, which is like
You
a
couldn't
sound
you
system
actually
issue,
couldn't hear it. Yeah.
that I for a hot second, I was like, was this an accident? Like, did they mean? But
Yeah,
like, it was clearly like it was
clearly
part
accident.
of it. But it was, yeah, I thought that was really weird. Again, like think back to last year, the Peach Bowl, right? How stupid it was with the made up Ole Miss quotes, right? And fans were like,
Hey,
"This
by
is
the way,
insane."
how did
Uh oh,
how did Ole Miss do this weekend?
they lost.
To Kentucky at home. Tough.
Hmm.
Tough to see. Interesting.
Anyhow, I guess I'm sure we don't have any Ole Miss listeners here. Um,
No, I promise we don't.
but yeah, so I thought that was like, yeah, the pregame thing to me was bizarre, but you see the defense, the way they thrive off of this crowd, um, for all of the penalties and all of they got to get out of their own way. You have the 3rd and 21 where they give up 30 yards. I know
Yeah.
there were a lot of people on edge early on in the game with the way the defense looked. They were without Dom DeLuca today, so Dakari Nelson got his first start, which is pretty crazy when you think that
Yeah.
this was a safety who just made the transition this summer, and here he is starting the first game of his career. Um, when you look at what Penn State was able to do, particularly as a run defense, Illinois wants to run the ball, right? That's the thing we knew coming in today. That's what they were going to try to do. Uh, 34 rushing yards, John, a number we have not seen often or that I can ever really
Yeah.
recall seeing.
So
1.1 yards per rush.
to be clear,
Add
it's
in the
not
caveats. I
it's not
know.
really those numbers.
Come
And this
on,
is I
John.
understand why James does it, but like I don't know why this hasn't been changed in college football. It's
Yeah.
stupid. Like so
Yeah.
sack yards,
Text.
negative yards count as rushing yards. Like we don't like it's dumb. So they actually ran for 77 yards. Still very good by Penn State
Mhm.
and 3.1 yards per carry. Still very good by Penn State, right? Like this was still an excellent game for the defense. The first drive he was like okay, like is this about to happen again? They got it together almost immediately. I know you mentioned the 3rd and 31, but again, it didn't nothing came of it. Like that'll happen on occasion. If you're going to give up an explosive play, I'd rather give it up on a drive where you still prevent the other team from scoring, right? Like
Yeah,
and
I
you
mean, you can play the argument of, oh, well, it changes field position, right? And you give the 30 yards, but
as I've
ultimately
evidenced
in this
before,
game, it was not.
I don't really care about field position. Like
See,
good
this is
offenses. This is well part of the thought process behind it too. Is like if you're facing an elite offense, like the example I always give is like Patrick Mahomes. If you're playing the Chiefs in the NFL, if you're playing Patrick Mahomes, there's no difference for that dude between 80 yards and 40 yards. Like he's going either way. Like
yep,
you're just like wasting
it's
time by
inevitable. Hmm.
or taking opportunities away from your own offense by not pushing the issue a little bit more. But yeah, I digress. I don't need to
Do you
continue to
know,
drag
John?
out that
Because this
conversation.
this number snuck up on me, and admittedly, like I was writing a lot in the second half because I got to get my takeaways out. You know how many sacks Penn State had today?
4?
Keep
Was it
looking.
4?
Keep
No,
looking.
I thought I knew this. Was it not
Mm,
4? Why can't I not find this? Oh,
mm.
7. Okay, okay.
Yeah,
They must have
7
racked them up when I was
at the
see,
end.
now some
Yes.
of that is game flow stuff, but again, this is like part of James talked about making the defense, one-dimensional, or the offense one-dimensional.
Offense.
This is like the advantage of getting a lead. Like, you can unleash those pass rushers a bit more. They don't have to worry about their run responsibilities, so they can just get after it, and that's what they did. Abdul Carter, I know he finished with 2 sacks. I think that was amended. It's originally listed at 1.5, and I thought they switched it to 2 sacks and 4 tackles for loss in the final book. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe they changed it back after changing it once already. But yeah, I
Look
thought
to
this was
see.
a great game by the pass rush in general.
Yeah, I'm looking at it might have been changed because what I'm seeing right now is Jalen Reed 1 sack, Abdul Carter
Yeah.
1.5, Kobe King 1, Tony Rojas a half sack, Zane Durant a sack. That I say his was like very memorable.
Yep.
Denied Dennis Sutton with a sack as well. 13 tackles for loss, which is pretty jarring number
Tailgate.
as well. I mean, it was. I think we're seeing the pieces on this defense, but I think there's also the element of so here this is what came to my mind, especially during the first half. Can you imagine, John, if you take last year's defense and put it with this year's offense?
Well, I think this year's defense might end up being better than last year's defense. So
That's a take. I don't.
I know.
I still think this is a very good defense. I still think at the end, like they're going to have really good stats. They're going to be really, really good. I just so far we've seen, and I get some of it's health related too, right? Like you're playing without KJ Winston, that is not easy.
Yeah.
But I do think like there have been those moments where you're like, "Oof, that's a little interesting."
I
Again,
think
I go
I
back.
think it's
Go ahead.
probably, we know how good the defense was last year, so we think about it more positively. There were moments like that last year too, where they like would give something up and you were like, "Oh,
Yeah,
okay, like what's the deal here?" Right? Like
we can say
uh
it now. The other guys get paid too,
yeah, true.
right?
Yeah, I think they'll get to Ohio State and USC and they'll look like they did last year when they played Ohio State and Michigan again. I think it'll be pretty similar.
Yeah, you think they'll round into form? Um,
Yeah.
because to me, the thing that, and again, I have to go back and look at the numbers, but the thing that I find to be so different is the penalties, and it's like these guys just seemingly. And again, yeah, I know John, you're anti penalties because you don't think they're impacting much.
No, I like you should not be trying to commit penalties. I just don't think like you don't want
You don't
to
think
commit
the
penalties.
impact is as much
It
as
just
maybe I'm making it out to be in my mind.
Yeah,
Um,
I think the numbers would bear that out, and James said as much.
so there you are. You're always in agreement with James. Trying
Yeah,
to gang up
that's
against my
right.
takes.
That's right.
Um, but yeah, no, I just I'm still not totally bought in on the defense, and I think that's the piece where again it's also been difficult too because of who they've played, right? So you have that. Tom Allen was back upstairs again today for the second week in a row. Anthony Poindexter was on the sideline, so you kind of work through that communication piece there and the way that they're doing that. Um, I did catch two special teams. They had obviously Nick Singleton still back to return kicks, but Julian Fleming was back there with him because that used to be Cam Wallace back there with
Yes,
Singleton. So that was a change there. We saw
clearly
Caden
a blocking
Saunders.
role.
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
someone who can catch the ball and someone who will block.
Yep. We saw Caden Saunders again back as the punt returner. We still have not seen him in that wide receiving core really. Like that's been.
I don't think he took any snaps there today.
I haven't seen snap counts yet, but off the top of my head, I do not recall seeing him out there.
Yeah,
We did see Luke Reynolds seemingly again. We'll go back and look at the snap counts before we're back midweek, but Luke Reynolds was out there quite a bit today as well. It felt like, um, so that's kind of something else. But yeah, I think this is an interesting win when you look at the context of this season because they had to find a different way to win. We found out that Penn State can run the ball. And like for me, that's a really big thing to know as you move forward. John, was there anything else post game that stood out to you? Because I was pretty much posted up with Kaytron Allen post game, chatting with him. Anything else post game that I missed or
no, I did. Like I said, you can find the story at SenderDaily.com. I wrote about how like this offense is clearly different than
Mhm.
last year's, and that's meaningful, and more people are noticing, right? Like Brett Bielema, like when he was asked about it, said offensively they're totally different. There's no doubt in my mind, and so like, I mean that's a good indicator. He played them last year, right? And he played Kansas too last year, so he can see some of those
Yep.
differences. But yeah, a lot of good perspective from guys on how it's different, why it's different, what Andy Kotelnicki is doing.
The
To
Coach K effect?
sure, why not? It's almost 4 a.m., so we'll go with that. But yeah, I think for the most part, it was they're they're clearly celebrating wins like they portray them to be, right? Like that every
Yeah.
week the 1-0 thing, like they're enjoying this, and I think they should, and I imagine that'll continue next week when they play UCLA.
And I'm just John, I'm here to celebrate the fact that I didn't die going down
Yes.
the scary staircase
Okay,
tonight.
before we get to the scary stairs, I
Mhm.
want to, while we're off the rails, mention something because I took
Yep.
I mentioned Ole Miss earlier. Did you watch any of Ole Miss Kentucky today?
I did. I watched the fourth quarter. I had it on. I was
Yeah.
doing schoolwork this morning, but I had the fourth
Did you
quarter on.
watch did you watch Ole Miss Wake Forest last week, the game that I was at?
That was 2 weeks ago, right? 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, 2 weeks ago,
Yeah,
sorry.
2 weeks.
2 weeks
No,
ago.
no, I did not.
The faking injuries with
Oh, yeah,
Kiffin's
yeah.
teams is
Mhm.
like it's out of control. Like it's like you can go back to that Iowa Penn State game a few years ago when Iowa fans were claiming that
Scuba
Penn State,
turtle and all that whole
yeah, when they were claiming that Penn State was faking injuries when
and
in all
PJ
reality
Mustipher
Jaquan
was
Brisker was Mustipher tore up his knee and Brisker was like separating his shoulder every time he hit anybody, which like sure, I'm sure they're faking it. But like there was a moment today. There were a couple times one at that game that I was at, and like I was my seats were pretty much field level, so you could see and hear the sideline, and they're like telling guys to go down, like because they want to break for the defense. There was a moment they caught it on camera today. The broadcast was like calling it out
Oh,
pretty
I
aggressively
saw
too.
that on Twitter
But
where they were like,
the
"This
one
guy's acting like he just got shot." Yeah.
the one that is went viral is where Jackson Dart clearly says to their backup running back who's in for Parrish at the moment. Parrish, their
Yep.
starting running back, was out of the game at the moment. Dart turns to the running back and like says like they want you to go down, and he's like, "What?" He's like, "Go down." He's like, "Oh, okay." And then he goes on the ground and grabs like
Yeah, that I did
like
see that clip. Yes.
I will give Lane Kiffin credit because it takes a lot to have that little shame with regard to those things, and he clearly has none. So,
The man, I mean, if we didn't know John, I mean, he's doing all
and
kinds of
like this is
TikToks
the thing. Like, I think Lane is like one of the most brilliant offensive play callers and play designers, and has one of the best offensive schemes and all. And the way they run tempo is so good.
Mhm.
Their offense is outside of today usually so good, like one of the best in the
That's a
country.
big
And I
caveat.
just think it's so stupid to do that kind of stuff. Like really, you got to try and get every little edge. Like, give me a break. Goes back to like college coaches being paranoid and thinking like that
Oh,
if
yeah.
they open up practice like that, suddenly they're going to be giving away all of their secrets, or they say one thing in a press conference, they're going to give away the secret to the program, and suddenly they're going to lose a game because of it. Like, it all goes back to that. Like, you don't like every little
Competitive
edge, like
advantage.
it's not really going to matter. Like, you're just being annoying. Like, that's what that is. Like, you're being really annoying. I just needed to get that out there because this has been bothering
That's
me for now 12 hours since that game ended, and of course ended with a Kentucky win.
you can let it out, John. That's fine because I'm a little shook from
Yes,
my
anyways,
staircase experience.
so
I'm
Audrey, just unbelievably, instead of going down to the field, when I did when the elevators were accessible for us, decided not to do that and
well
had to
because it was
admit to me that I was right about the scary
because
stairs.
no, because I was still working and it was like I gotta get this in. It's a closer game, which makes it
Mhm.
harder to write, right? Like for us, this is why we always say like we root for the story, and for us,
Yeah.
sometimes the best scenario is a blowout because it's easier to write. Those takeaways can be filed early.
Shout out to my editor, Josh Moyer, who had full control of the situation. And if those takeaways needed to be rewritten by me, he had them.
He had a with John's name on the top, but if you didn't like it, then it was not John who wrote it. But anyway, so I'm trying to get that done, and at this point, there's like a minute and 17 seconds left in the game, and I hit the elevator button, and because sometimes they forget to hold them, and I was like, okay, it's coming, it's coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was not coming. So I go to the other elevator at the other end of the press box, and I was like, well, if they got that one, maybe they forgot the other one. I have my ear against like the elevator shaft, trying to see if I can hear it, and I was like, I don't hear it. I'm screwed. So I go toward the exit. I go down, and it's not good when you get to the door and it says something on the door like "keep closed to keep birds out." And I was like, oh, here we
Yeah.
go. This is it,
I saw
right?
that sign.
I pushed the door open, John. I took a photo. I did tweet it out. Um,
Actually, I've not seen this. I'm going to pull it up right now.
It's out there on Odd Snyder 4.
That's
I
right.
go out there and I'm like, okay, I'm going down the stairs. Mind you, it's night game. It's dark out. It's rained all day. It's rained all week. These steps are slick. And I
Which is how
kid
they
you
were
not.
when we went down the
Yeah,
when we went down the one time
last
I
year.
did.
And at this point, I'm like, okay, I get 2 sets of stairs down. It crossed my mind to go, I think I should turn around and go back. And then I was like, I don't think I can go back because the door with the birds probably locks behind
Yes.
me.
Well, this is part of the problem. Like, and then it makes
You're
you more
stuck.
anxious because you were
Yes.
trapped.
And I was like,
I'm getting
okay.
anxious now thinking
I
about this.
I was so anxious to go down the steps. I'm holding like the railing. I have my book bag on. It's slick. I kid you not. There are pieces of like the floor. Like there's a couple spots where like it's like rusted out, and I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna fall
Yes.
through here and die. Um, so I'm going down the steps, and I was like, this is it. Like, this is how it ends here on the scary staircase for me. I got down to the bottom eventually. I took my time. And I was still like, by the time I got out of the field, I was like, I got to tell John about this. But also, like, I still don't feel great from doing this. Like, it was just one of
Right.
those, it's horrible. Like,
Audrey
this,
was still shaking, like
yeah,
from
like,
the
there
anxiety
is
of going down the
no,
steps.
like, yeah, it was just, it's a really stupid thing. And I cannot wait to see these steps get torn down. Because
The whole
again,
press
like,
box.
yeah, the whole press box is getting just torched. And it was just one of those where I was like, this is as, like, it's worse than I remembered. And I remembered it being pretty bad.
I tried to tell you. I like I I
But
was
here's
not
the thing.
exaggerating. I
So,
just, by
like,
the way, I just watched like 7 seconds of the video and I could feel a pit in my stomach and I
right?
can't watch it. It makes me, because it takes me back to when I don't know if I've told this part of the story on the podcast. So I've said before, I'm afraid of heights, and like it made me super anxious to go down these steps. I remember when we did it, I didn't have my backpack, I just had my laptop. And I was like shaking and I was like scared I was going to drop my laptop because it's rainy, it's
Yep.
wet, it's gross, like and your hands are wet. And so I gave you my laptop and put it in your backpack so I could like death grip these
Yeah.
stairs like as I went down. And I remember like your life flashes as you're going down them, and like you get to the bottom, and like that's the most grateful I've ever
Yeah.
felt in my life is when I got to the bottom of those stairs. And I don't think it was last year. I think it was 2 years ago.
Might have been
Uh,
2 years ago.
but like, yeah, I will never do that. I'm not kidding. So if that
Yeah.
happens and I'm like gonna miss James's presser, I'm like, I guess I'm
I'm
gonna miss the
missing it.
presser. Like I'm not doing it. I will never do that again in my
It
entire life.
was
And by the
I
way,
you go
Ohio State has those too, where they sometimes have to hold the elevator, but it's like you're outside and it's open air. Like there's no like you're kind of fenced in at Penn State. And so it's even worse for me because I was like, you could just feel like you could topple over the edge and go at any
I don't
moment. It was
remember
awful.
Ohio State's. I don't
The only time I had to go down them was 5 years ago, I think, when
okay.
I was our secondary writer, so I wasn't full time on the beat yet. And I just remember I missed the time, the window to go, and so I had to take. And I won't. I'll sit in the press box.
Yeah, it's I got down and I looked at my hands and they were like all clammy and sweaty and like and then I
Yes,
looked and I was like, "Oh my god, I hope I don't have rust on my hands because it's that old and rickety that it's like this is." So for anyone who's like questioning Beaver Stadium renovations, after I took the stairs, John, I'd like to officially change my stance on everything and say forget about the renovation, just get rid of all of it just so I don't even have to ever think of the stairs.
and I'm just
Um
like I feel very vindicated for all of the takes that I had and
that's
all
why
the
I'm
things
here.
that I said about how awful they were. And listen, you undersold it. You said it wasn't that bad. You
And
said
I've
that I
gone down
was
these steps
scared.
many times,
I
and
would
I never
appreciate,
liked it, but
yeah, I would appreciate it because I'm not going to do this. If a listener would go back and find all of the mean things that Audrey said about me and send me the
wait,
clips to
with
that, like
disregard
send
to
the
the
time of the
stairs or, like,
episode.
with everything?
Well, I mean, that would take too long if it were everything. But with the stairs,
Stairs.
and then we can clip it all together, and then we can play it for her in the next episode because that's what she deserves. Because again, it's
Or we'll play
horrifying.
it with,
It's
like,
no
a nice
fun.
tribute song.
Yeah,
Be like,
sure,
"In the arms
whatever
of
it
the
takes.
angels," as Audrey goes down the stairs.
That's what it feels like when you're going down them.
Yeah, that was it was a night, and we yeah, I guess we don't know if and when there is another night game, right? We don't I don't
So, I
because
mean,
we
it depends
think
on what you mean by what we know,
well, right,
right?
right, 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 yeah.
So
Publicly.
I do not
I don't
believe
think there should
there
be
will be
another.
another night game at Beaver Stadium, to be clear, because Ohio State probably going to be big noon. Washington, is likely to be it will be 3:30 or 7, but I mean I would lean
I would
toward
think
3:30.
3:30, yeah.
The educated guess, we'll call it, would be 3:30, and I can't imagine they're going to make that Maryland game to end the year a night game. That'd be pretty funny, but like I can't imagine they will. Maybe a playoff game is a night game.
That's true, and
Uh,
I guess so here we go back to that whiteout thing, John. If Penn State is a home playoff game, is it a whiteout this year?
I don't think they'll call it one. I think they'll just do what they
I
did
think
this
the
week
yeah, yep.
because there are other issues at play here as to why they can't
Mhm.
call it a whiteout. That happened this week too. Audrey, by the way, wrote a great story about like all of that stuff over at the Athletic. You should go read that. But yeah, like I think it will be a lot like this week, that they will essentially make it a whiteout without calling it a whiteout in a playoff game.
And which is the stripe out is for Ohio State, maybe? Or I don't
No,
remember.
you think it's next week for UCLA.
Oh, maybe.
Ohio State is the
Yeah.
helmet stripe game, because the
Oh,
helmet
that's
stripe,
right. That's yes.
the whiteout with the
Yeah,
section
the
that wears
sneaky
blue.
whiteout. That's what I was
as
thinking of,
James
the
called
helmet. Yeah.
it.
There's
But
so
I
many
believe.
themes around here, John. I just want
Yeah,
get rid of the stairs theme. That's all I need.
yeah. I would like to. I'm very excited when they blow up the press box to be there for it. I'll
I
tailgate
honestly
it.
I thought it was gonna happen tonight, because when they set the fireworks off pregame
Oh.
on both sides, I was like, I actually tweeted out a joke about it. I was like, yeah, I think they're just trying to burn it down.
Every time that press box shakes, I die a little on the inside. I hate it. I hate it so much. I mean, the environment's so cool and it's so great, and it's one of the greatest
But it'll be
spectacles in the
nicer
history
when
of
we're in
sport.
a
I
more
would just like to
stable
know that
environment next year.
the building I'm in isn't going to fall because of that spectacle, and that I'm not going to turn into the spectacle. But yeah, I
He
mean, it
died
was,
doing what he loved.
yeah, right. Anyways, at least it wasn't the stairs, and at least I wasn't dumb enough to go down those stairs. I
Who would
hope you
do
learned
that?
your lesson, and I
I did.
hope next time that happens that I get a text from you that says, "Hey, stuck in the press box, not coming down. Send me the audio," and then I'll do that. I'll send you the audio because I'm a good friend, and I would
True.
never make anyone go down those stairs or try to convince them. That, by the way, if someone does this and goes back and finds these clips, also send me when all of the episodes where Audrey tried to say she was going to make me go down the stairs, or we were going to bet where I had to go down the stairs, because that ain't happening. It was never happening. But I think we are finally at a good place
As we
to leave
approach
it.
4 a.m.
Yes, we appreciate all of you who stuck around for this long. As you can tell, the delirium is sinking in a little bit. Audrey and I have both had a very long day, a very fun day, a great college football day. A lot of fun to be able to watch some of that before the Penn State Illinois game. You can read all of our coverage from the Penn State Illinois game. You can read mine at centerdaily.com. Audrey's over at the Athletic. You can find her tweets, including the video of her. Not even the video of her going down the stairs, because she went like a flight of the stairs and put the phone away because she was terrified. On her Twitter at OddSnyder4. You can find me on Twitter at John Sauber. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. If you're on Apple Podcasts, leave us a 5-star rating, leave us a review. We'd really appreciate that. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the thumbs up button down below. Hit the subscribe button as we continue that march to 2,000. We will be back midweek to discuss Penn State UCLA, a UCLA team that lost to Oregon at I don't know, it was 2 a.m. East Coast time tonight. That game ended, so I'm sure that
Pac-12 Big Ten after dark.
Yes, that's right. But we will be there here to discuss that. Have some updates, hopefully, from James Franklin at Monday's press conference. Talk about some of the things that we talked about tonight. But until then, thank you for tuning in. Have a great day.